the How Do We Rate Books tag. This is another tag I've been meaning to do for a few days. Doing it today on Monday because I don't know how I'm going to feel tomorrow on Tag Tuesday, and I wanted to make sure I got to it because it looked like fun. I saw multiple friends of mine on BookTube do this one. Steve Donahue and the Evening Reader and Michael K. Vaughn. So it looked like a fun one to do for me. And anyway, here I go. Here are the questions. Number one, how often do you DNF and what makes you DNF? Okay, so DNF stands for do not finish, which has an implication that you're going to quit reading the book, never pick it back up again and try to read it again. It's really rare for me to DNF anything, especially now that I have a BookTube channel, because, you know, I like to finish what I start kind of thing too, but I also like to talk about books that are bad as well as good on the channel, because if all I ever did was come on here and rave about everything I read, you know, people might wonder. But yeah, so I do DNF books every now and then, but usually they're like DNF FN, did not finish for now. And probably the easiest way to measure that is to look at my Goodreads account, where I'm currently reading 23 books. But most of them are books that I just didn't finish. And I don't know why, but some books are just like that. I've started but not finished the 39 Steps twice now. Don't know why. It's not a very long book. You know, if I had any kind of self-discipline at all, which I don't, I could have finished it easily in an hour or two. And then also, This Is Where I Leave You. Started it twice, gave up on it twice. Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy is another one. It's really dense, though. That one is a great investment of time. Steve Donahue would say that I'm definitely making the right decision by not finishing that one, but I may come back to it at some point in the future. You just never know how you're going to react to a book at 53 years old as opposed to 23 years old or 33 years old. I remember loving The Catcher in the Rye as a 20-year-old man, but I read it again as a 45-year-old man, and I thought, God, I can't believe this was really that powerful to me back then. So, question number 2. Do you rate books 1 star? So, okay, so star ratings to me are, you know, a little reductive, but they're convenient, and they're not that hard, in my opinion, to do. They're like giving a letter grade. A 5-star book is an A. A 4-star book to me is a B. 3 stars a C. 2 stars a D, and a 1 star is an F. That means you failed. A is outstanding or excellent. B is good. C is average. And 2 is below average, but not quite failing. You know, it achieves the minimum. So I don't think it's difficult to give a star rating to a book using those parameters. For me, it's not anyway. But yeah, a book has to completely fail for me to give it 1 star. Yeah, I mean, you know, grammatical errors, just failing on multiple levels of competency as a writer is what makes me give a book 1 star. And, you know, I don't see that often. You know, most books are at least 2 stars, which brings me to question number 3. What is a 2-star book to you? A 2-star book isn't a good book. And it isn't even a book that I necessarily liked, but it just barely passes the minimum. You know, it does what it's supposed to do. It just doesn't do it very well or with very much panache. And I just read a book, I believe it was by Colonel Alexander Vindman. I may have the first name wrong, but he was the lieutenant colonel who spoke up about the phone call that he was on where Trump was pressuring Ukraine to launch an investigation into Joe Biden, and it was part of the big impeachment proceedings and stuff. It was a memoir, and it was fairly short, but I almost gave it 2 stars because the first 100 pages of the book, it's about 250 pages, first 100 pages of the book were really dry. And, you know, he's not a great writer, or his ghostwriter's not a great writer. Not a terrible writer, it's readable. I ended up giving it 3 stars because I gave it extra points for sincerity. You know, he's the real deal. it seemed to me like the book was almost as much of a resume as anything else, especially the first part of the book. But I think he wanted to give people a reason for believing his story as opposed to others. Like, look at my career. You know, how am I not more credible than Tucker Carlson, for example? So that part of the book really dragged. But once he got into the towards the end of his career, which, you know, ended, it's a bummer that it ended the way that he did. It started to pick up a little bit. But I mean, you know, I would have given it 2 stars for things like repeating certain words. I don't know how many times he explained that his brother and he, as children, were irrepressible. You know, not a word that comes up that often and stuff. But I mean, it is just, sure came up a lot in this book. I mean, it was noticeable. It stood out like a sore thumb. And that's a pretty basic mistake to write. Pretty basic mistake in a book. Should have been caught in the editing process, as far as I'm concerned, frankly. But anyway, like I say, you know, I gave it 3 stars because in the end I really liked it, especially in terms of the sincerity of how things went down at the end of his career. And I'm hoping that the next act in his life goes really, really well because, you know, I'm convinced that he was a decent person. So, you know, I'm flexible on the whole 2-star thing. Is a 3-star book a good book for you? Well, you know, it's average. It's readable without me thinking, oh God, there's lots of mistakes here, there's lots of mistakes there. Really doesn't make me say, wow, or whoa, that was really good, or anything like that. You know, a lot of the genre fiction that I read, you know, like these Star Trek novels, you know, a lot of them are just 3-star books. You know, occasionally you'll get one that's a 4-star book, but I can't imagine that there are any Star Trek novels that I'm going to give 5 stars to. I've given a 5-star rating to only a couple of books this year. So yeah, a 3-star book, like I said, is average, but average leaning towards good. Okay. And I think most people, or a lot of people who rate books with star ratings, tend to overrate them. You know, they give 3 stars, 4 stars, or 5 stars because they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or make anybody feel bad by giving them a 2-star or 1 star. So I don't know. I guess that's all right too. But I used to be the same way. But now, you know, the book gets the star book rating that it gets these days, from me anyway. I don't pay that much attention to them anyway, and I don't think most authors should pay attention to them either. It's just my opinion. What does 4 stars mean to you? Now, 4 stars books, okay, if you use that grading rubric as earlier, that's a B. That's a good book, you know. And I read a lot of good books. You know, for example, I'm looking at my shelf over here. I gave Last Exit by Max Gladstone 4 stars. It was terrific. Trying to think. I gave My Best Friend's Exorcism 4 stars. It was a really pleasant surprise. I really enjoyed reading that this year. You know, it's just a good book. Do you ever do half-star ratings? That's question number 6. No, I don't mess around with half-star ratings. You know, since I don't take star ratings that seriously, and I don't think other people should either, I just don't see much point in giving that additional gradation in there. You know, what's the difference between a 3.5-star book and a 3-star book or a 4-star book? You know, it's just a quick and dirty evaluation, or it's meant to be. I'm not going to spend a lot of time thinking about a star rating. I'm just going to go with my gut and give it the star rating when I input it in my list on Goodreads, which is mostly there just so I can see a list of the books I've read anyway. I don't think too many people are looking on there to see if old Randy Ray gave it 4 stars or 2 stars, and that's going to affect their decision to read it. Even my friends probably aren't going to skip a book they want to read just because I said they shouldn't, you know. Do you rate books 5 stars often? No, absolutely not, you know. I probably give books 5 stars more often than I give them 1 star. You know, I have at least enough discernment to try to avoid the 1-star books. The 5-star books are always the ones that just, you know, 5-star book is the one that gives you that thrill that you're always hoping for. I'm always hoping that a book will surprise me and be a 5-star book. This year, I gave 5 stars to The Quiet American by Graham Greene. You know, And I don't know that I've given anything 5 stars this year besides that. I'm looking at my shelf over here of the books that I've read this year, and I don't, well, you know what? I think I gave The Hotel New Hampshire by John Irving 5 stars also. It was a great book. What do 5-star books do to make them rate that high? This is still question number 7. What do they do? Well, I had a college professor who explained to me one time that, there's objective stuff that you can look at when it comes to literature and stuff. But he related to us a story about jazz music, and a song, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. And he said, in terms of literature, that swing is the part of the book that affects you emotionally inside. And of course, he also explained to us that the more meaningful part of that lyric was doo-wop, 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 doo-wop. But that's what I'm looking for is, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. I'm looking for something that actually speaks to me in a very real and profound way. When I've read a book and I'm like, man, that's given me a new perspective, that might actually have changed my life a little bit. That's what I'm looking for from a 5-star book. Number 8, has your ratings of books changed over the years? I addressed that briefly earlier. Yes, it has changed. I used to be afraid of offending authors of books and only gave 3, 4, and 5-star ratings. But yeah, I'm not so worried about that anymore. If you're worried about what star rating I gave your book, man, I don't know. Maybe you're in the wrong business or something. Number 9, where do you record your ratings of your books? Goodreads. That's just the app that I use, and it's a lousy app. I don't much care for the app, but that's just what I've always used. And it's, mostly I've used it for the last 10 years to keep track of a list of books that I've read and how many books I've read during that year and that sort of thing. So anyway, I thought this was a fun tag. A lot of people have a lot more to say about how to rate books than I have to say. Rating books to me isn't it isn't the most important part of the reading experience, or even the communicating with other people about the reading experience. I'd much rather talk with people about different aspects of a book, like the characterization, or, the use of first person versus third person, that sort of thing. I read a Louis L'Amour book earlier this year where half the book was written in first person from the perspective of the boy character. The other half of the book was written in third person from the perspective of the hero of the novel. And it was an okay book, but that was a really jarring experience. I don't think it was a successful experiment in point of view. And that's the kind of thing I'd rather discuss than whether or not that book was a 2 or 3 star book. He tried something here. How well did it work? Let's talk about that. So that's how I feel about book ratings. And I thought it was a fun tag. Wanted to get to it. And good Lord willing and creek don't rise, I'll have some more videos up before too long. Thanks for watching.